advertise. And I'll just keep letting people in as we go. I don't think it'll be too chaotic for me to be letting people in because other people are going to be talking. So you guys are going to be so excited. I actually have a PowerPoint. So that way we can chat through all of this as we go. All right. No, don't change. There we go. Just want to move my box over here so I can read it. Okay. Good morning. So I've got everybody in so far that's waiting. So welcome to session 2 of talking about the 6 habits of growth. This was something that is only on, let me make sure I turned on, one second guys, I just realized I don't know if I turned on captions or. Hey Andrea, can you let me know if if captions are on for you? I'm going to open the chat and see. I just want to make sure that you can keep up with, and I'll try not to talk too fast. I notice that the captions sometimes mess up my words because I tend to talk fast. All right, so I have been very impacted by a lot of the things that I've heard in this book, and every time that I go through the next chapter, a second and a third and a fourth time even, I'm like, oh, I didn't catch that before, or that didn't hit me that way before. And I think what's cool about that is that as we share this in a discussion kind of club, I'm going to hear things that you caught and that resonated with you that maybe I didn't catch for the same reasons, or that didn't hit me the same way, or that I didn't think about it, how to apply it in the same way that you did. And so I think what jumped out at me first was, we're not going to really talk about the introduction part, at least for me, but you guys are welcome, if your notes cover some things that were in the introduction, to bring that up if that's something you want to talk about. But for the purpose of time, I didn't kind of cover that in any of these slides. But what I thought was cool was that, you know, I've been in the business that I'm in for almost 10 years. And even before that, tended to be someone who I would consider, you know, motivated. To get things done. And so to dive into this and hear things that were kind of eye-opening for me about the topic of motivation was really interesting to me. And so I wanted to say about the 6 habits of growth in general, that one of the things Brendan says is that this is not about immediate transformation, because transformation takes time. And I think that's super important for us all to recognize. And you guys may not struggle with it the way that I tend to, but I tend to be like, I made this big decision, I'm going to do this big thing, and I want to go all in, whole hog, and then I mess up on day 3 and I'm like, well, forget that. And I think that that's where a lot of people get off track. And I think that's why we have that January resolution phenomenon where everybody is just ready to go and fired up, and this is how this year is going to be. And then we don't necessarily maintain the habits or even know how to implement those habits. So I think that's what I love about this book. And what else was I going to say? And yeah, this is a section where we're going to talk about how to build motivation and then have daily practices that move you forward consistently, which then creates momentum. And I think this, for me, has been something that's maybe been missing, at least to figure out how to maintain that, because we all have been in the situation where we lose motivation, and like, how do you bring that back when you've lost motivation? So he talks about that a lot. So I want to start with that. If anybody wants to jump in with any thoughts around, you know, when we lose motivation, what causes that to happen in your life?
Angela, for me, I would start with, you know, I sent the group that the John Maxwell quote about self-discipline, more than any other personal quality I can think of, is the one thing that separates successful people from unsuccessful. And it talks about honoring your commitments, your promises, your deadlines, keeping your life on a schedule, being willing to go the extra mile. Self-discipline is essential to success. And the alternative is a life ruled by emotions. None of us can afford that. So that tied in for me, because he talks about motivation is not an emotion. Well, wow, what did I think it was? So motivation
I
is
know.
action. And so when you, not to sum up, well, I guess this more came to me in the introduction, to tie all of this in together was, like you said, transformation takes time, but you have to cultivate self-awareness. You can't fix that. What you're learning in self-awareness has to be fixed through self-discipline. So transform yourself over time. You have to maintain that constant every day. You have to have the self-awareness. And then what are you going to fix? What did you become aware of? You're going to fix that through self-discipline and motivation. He said, you don't lose it. You have to cultivate it.
Yes, right. He
So
said something like reconnecting with, what was your drive in the first place. It's not really that we lost the motivation, it's that like we lost our connection to the motive, I think,
right.
if I'm paraphrasing him right.
And very pointedly, I put in all caps in my notes. Motivation is something you just have or feel. It isn't something that you just have or feel. It's something that you have to summon. So when I think of summon, I think if I'm going to summon something, that is an action that requires verb. You have to go to summon something, you go get it.
Awesome.
And so that is a very different mindset for me, because I thought, oh, you have motivation or you don't have motivation, right?
Right. And I just wrote that down when you said it, because you're right. I mean, this is just, for the bullet point, to summon is an action. That's a verb. It means do, versus what we think, which is motivation means it's what we feel. We either feel it or we don't feel it. And so, it's just like, I think that we've all experienced that thing of getting around people that are excited and motivated, and we kind of get a burst of that, and then we go away and it goes away, and we have to figure out why that's happening. So I think this has been very eye-opening. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
But just when you just mentioned that about getting around other people that are motivated, like that's the convention piece, like when you're around all of those people, convention. And I think doing this book right after convention to, sorry, my sister's texting me. She's trying to
I
get,
completely agree.
Wait,
We're
like
trying
adding,
to like extend
yes,
out
exactly.
that motivation.
Yeah, and I think like actually seeing everything he talked about and the different things to do and not to do, and like this will be very helpful to keep that going and to do daily steps to keep your motivation up. So
Right.
I think this is great that it's added in right now. Michelle's trying to get on. I need to send her the link again. My sister Michelle, not that Michelle's on here. So she might be trying to join, but she's at work, so she might not be able to talk much.
Yeah, I just let somebody in, so it pops up and lets me know, but it was Deborah.
Perfect.
Thank you for sharing that. So I put on this, motivation is habit number 1 of the 6. We talked about transformation takes time. These are the habits and daily practices that will create transformation. And so this chapter breaks down the habits that build motivation and then talks about how that generates momentum. I love that he says discipline is critical, but that motivation is the foundation of discipline. Because I think we are in a place where society talks a lot about, it's not about motivation, it's about discipline, just schedule it in. And I think that that's why I talked about this on a team call a few weeks ago. I was like, this is exactly where the breakdown is sometimes, is we have got to connect to what that motive is that even makes us want to be disciplined. Because I'll tell you, me and discipline are not best friends. So I really needed this. He talks about, I just covered that there's 3 key practices and that we need to spend a minimum of 5 minutes every day on those 3 key practices. And so we're gonna go through those and you guys can tell me what you got from it. That there's 3 daily actions we need to discern to take each day that's gonna move us towards whatever the goal is. And then he had 3 additional ideas to implement. So I'm gonna just jump into number 1 is raise ambition. I'll tell you my thoughts on that, and then I would love for somebody to jump in and talk about what your thoughts are around that. Okay. Motivation begins in our mind's conception of the future. Did I put that? Oh, it's on my next screen. I loved some of the quotes that he said because they just really stuck with me. Motivation begins in our mind's conception of the future. I think that we have gone through phases where we really put focus on doing something like a vision board. And then times when I'm like, oh, this crafty, thing and cutting and pasting and gluing and all that, what does it really matter if we're not doing the actions that it takes? And so I kind of threw it out the window, and that's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, if you know that, phrase. We do need that because we do need to make sure that we understand what it is that we care about, that we want to see our life look like. That's, going to raise our ambition so that we want to be motivated to do it. And so in that thinking, and thinking about that, we will feel some motivation. So we maybe have ambition for a better life. We want more of something, less of something. And so the question is, what truly is your vision for the future? So that's the question I'm putting out to you guys. What is your vision for the future? What makes you feel that burst of motivation when you imagine it? And so I spent some time sitting down thinking about that deeper than I usually do. And I was like, gosh, I do not spend some time every day thinking about this. I just kind of get on a roll and do the day. And I don't really think about that. And I thought this is powerful because I'm not one to stop and have that practice. He talks about standing at his battle board for 5 minutes every morning and just looking at, this is where I'm headed and how am I going to make today a good day? And I thought that was really incredible. He asks us to think about what we've hoped for and envisioned recently, like in recent months. And says that those of us who have not been actively hoping and thinking about the future and what we want have likely not been acting on anything that would get us further. And I thought that seems so obvious, but I don't think we think about it. And it certainly applies to me in many months and seasons and years, honestly. He said, these individuals who don't imagine the future being any better than today are more likely to be less productive and less resilient and not bounce back well from hurts. And that removing hope is shown to result in lack of motivation. So I think a lot of us can, recognize when periods of extreme difficulty, we know what that feels like. But I think sometimes we let it happen chronically too, by not really thinking about it. So I won't talk about the next part of this topic, which is just letting your past dictate what you're willing to envision for yourself. But I want to pause here and ask you guys, did you spend some time thinking about what that is that makes you feel motivated when you envision something better, more of something or less of something else? I wanted less stress over my finances. That was very motivating to me when I started my business.
I don't want to, you know that I'm a talker, so I will hog things. So you cut me off, but I will
I'm
say,
not, I won't cut you off. I'll tell you what, there's oftentimes participators and there's listeners, but we want to encourage.
yeah, so I happen to also be concurrently in a small group at church. And it's a financial study group, and it is a spiritually led group called I Was Broke Now I'm Not. And it's these two groups are mirroring each other. If you want to be successful, if you want to release worry, it really does start with, you have to have a goal. So you need to be able to imagine, what is it going to be like when you reach that goal? So whereas we might have put the vision board away, maybe this is where we replace it with the battle board. But it is so much about this key practice. I think he says this first, raise ambition first. And then I put equal. Raising ambition to me is going to be thinking about your future, imagining, saying, this is what I can do, this is what I will do. But I think a bigger key to all of that is that if you don't imagine it, you won't work towards it.
Absolutely.
But if it's also a key practice and a number one, because you have to start there. Every time you have to start there. You start with your goal. So that's why he's saying he goes and he stares at the battle board for 5 minutes. That's where he starts his day. When he walks into his office, he starts there. And I think that's because that's probably what we forget, right? So if I take it to a non-business aspect, if I take it just to a personal aspect for myself, if I start my day watching the news, looking at social media, looking at how awful everything is, that sets my tone for my day. So I think raising ambition being number one is where do we set our tone for our day, our week, our year? We're the only one who can set it. Nobody else can set that for us. If we purposefully wake up and set our tone as I'm not going to look at anything negative in my first hour or what have you, we're setting the tone for what our day will look like.
100%. I think that probably convicted a lot of us. I don't know how many of you guys are really good at that. I am not, but I think you really drilled down on that really well. Anybody else?
I was just going to say, so, January 1st, our family sat down, we made our vision board, battle board, whatever you want to call it. Right. And I know there's probably differences in that, but I was laughing because here's mine, right? Here it is. And I really took time on it. I really thought about it, but you know where it's been? In the corner of my office. It hasn't been where I'm focusing on that. And I think so many times I let my day plan me and I get swept up in all of that. But if I took 5 minutes and reminded myself, Sylvia Porter's doing a group. We're doing a Build the Last Book Club too. And every day she's like, why are you working? Why are you working? Why are you working? And so it's making me think, why am I going to sit down and work today? Right. But I just thought, you know what, this is going front and center now. But I was looking at it because I did make these plans and I really did think through these things. And so much of it is starting to happen. It's like it says pay off 2 cars. We paid off 1. We're on our way for the second one. I put on here serve in room 2911, which that was our foster closet, but we're doing something different. But this is what got me thinking about it again. So anyways, this really reminded me that I need to be looking at this daily to remind myself of what my goals are daily, like my long-term goals, right? I can realize my short-term goals pretty quickly, but it's those long-term goals that I need to be reminded of. So I loved what Michelle was saying about just starting your day that way. And I know that's what he was saying too in the book, but just starting that, just 5 minutes, big difference.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's just doing this to begin with. So I'm putting this right here so I can see.
Yeah, I think that I've been very guilty of that, sitting and writing the things down, and I'll write it down on a beautiful, on a piece of paper, and I'll make sure my handwriting looks so perfect and I've got it all down. I'm more wordy than, I like to write down what I'm thinking, and then it just sits there closed. I don't look at that. I don't remind myself of why I'm sitting down to work. And I think this was powerful for me. He says, no matter what we think our potential is based on, never mind. I didn't use good grammar. I don't know what I was saying in those notes. But he says, are you letting your past dictate what your ambition for the future is? And I thought this part was important too. He said, we have to decouple the past from what we think is possible for the future. And I loved that he said, we have to be willing to lift the pen from the last page and begin a new chapter. It is nobody's job but our own to decide what happens in the next chapters. So for me, that means every morning I have to think about what I want in the future and what I'm building towards, but I really have to think about abundance. And so I don't know if that's a skill that you want to develop that you're thinking about, and picturing yourself being rewarded for it. But he also says, think about it being a good day in front of you. Think about your day being productive and being a good day. I think very often I have found, and this is the last thing I'll say on this topic, if anybody else wants to share next, is I have before rolled into a day on numerous occasions where you wake up and, the cat has puked on the floor and somebody forgot something that you've got to run to them, and you just, are out of bed and just rushing into whatever your day is. And it's weird, but I always notice, but it makes complete sense, that every time the day starts out like that, my whole day is sideways. And I don't think it's necessarily because of the things that happened in those first 30 minutes. More so it's because I didn't kind of reset and reframe my thinking about the day. And I think that even when the day goes like that, I need to be able to come back to center, take care of who forgot what, and clean up the cat stuff and whatever, and then come back to these steps. Anybody else get like that? Okay. Okay, so I am going to, unless someone's got more on raising ambition and what that meant to them, I'm going to jump into develop positive expectancy. If you don't believe it, you won't achieve it. Oh, let me see something. I should have skipped to the next. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything that we were supposed to talk about. I forgot to change my topic there. Motivation begins in our minds. We talked about that. What is different that you want in the future? What does it look like? What does it feel like? I hope you guys did that work, or that you will do it, to make sure that you really think and feel, what's that going to mean to me? What's it going to feel like when that happens? What have you hoped or envisioned in recent months? We talked about all of those things, so I'm going to skip to the next one. Sorry about getting carried away talking and not changing topics. I jumped right to the end. Oh, yeah, I forgot this one. Let's end on this question. How have you been limiting yourself because of a past story or situation? I think that was worth taking a moment to just ask that question. You can write it down for yourself, or you can share it here if you already know what that is. I can share. I've always got something. Anybody feel like, oh, hey, I wasn't really putting my ambition as high as I could have been because of this thing in the past that I believed about myself? Maybe because of things that happened or things that people said to you.
I'll tell you, about a year ago, I had set a goal for myself. I wanted to take the PMP exam. It's a professional management. And I was really excited about it. I was like ready to pay for it, sign up for it and everything. And I was talking with a dear friend of mine, and they're a little older, actually just retired. And her husband is one of the smartest guys I know. And he had that certification and he took the exam. And in a very laissez-faire way, he said to me, oh, that was such a hard test. Oh, it was so hard. Oh, it was really hard. I had to like go study in a hotel for 3 days before I took the exam. Oh, it was just brutal.
And you just marked yourself out of that right at that point, didn't you?
Yeah. I said, oh, he's smarter than me. I'll never pass. And I don't have the experience. So I just marked it off. I just never thought about it again. Now, again, here at work, I'm going, yeah, I really should have taken that exam. And then I think, oh, but I'm not good with Excel spreadsheets. So maybe this probably going to be way too hard for me. And I just marked myself out.
Yeah, I think that's really common. I think for me, even, when I look at in my business and the career that I'm in, I look at people that are, just phenomenal at like having these giant like team events and they are just these, really dynamic leaders as diamonds and stuff. And I go, I don't know how to do that. So I almost set myself like, maybe I should just stay where I am because I don't want to try to get that far and then suck at it. So that's basically kind of what I end up feeling like. All right. So positive expectancy. This is about if you don't believe that something's possible, you're not going to achieve it. And the reason you're not going to achieve it, it's nothing woo-woo. It's just simply, if I don't think I can figure it out, if I don't think it's possible for me, I'm not going to put on my shoes and get out the door and go do it. because I don't even believe that it's possible. So I think that it's really important that we focus on telling ourselves, you know, hey, that is possible for me and I can grow into that. To accomplish, I've covered up my notes here, to accomplish the things you truly need to expect, that it's possible for you to do that thing and to grow in that way, because when you don't, you won't try, and then you won't endure the hardships that are necessary to get there. Anybody have any thoughts on that one? And he has
Well,
some really good steps too,
Yeah,
on
Angela,
journaling about this.
I can add to kind of what Michelle said, because in my current position, we do Six Sigma at our company. So I had my green belt, my co-worker, partner in everything that I do, didn't have his. So he's like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Oh, I did it. And then my senior leadership decided, well, we want to nominate Shelley for black belt. But like Michelle said, it's a 2-week course. It's a 4-hour test. It's really difficult, but I just told myself I was going to do it. And I actually passed it 2 weeks ago, passed
Congratulations.
the black belt test, but I need to learn how to apply that to other aspects of my life, whether it be Plexus, whether it be my home, whether it be my kids, to set that expectancy. Because I told myself I wasn't going to, you know, not pass this test. And there was 28 of us in there, and big managers and all these other people. And they, like, 2 of the managers didn't pass. And I'm like, what do you mean you didn't pass? You know, but
Right.
I did. I mean, I worked hard because I did. I told myself, I have this, it's mine. You know, I claimed it. I said it was mine. And that I
Wow.
went with that. But now I have to learn how to apply that in other aspects, because I don't do that. I
Well-
kind of shrivel in other
Well, but
places.
but here's what's important is that you know that that works because you have proven that to yourself. So that's really exciting to me and for you. And so when he gives you these steps and talks about, hey, when you hit a snag, when you are feeling not motivated, when you're feeling down on yourself about whatever the other goals are that are on your battle board or your vision board, that to journal about it. And that's not been something I've ever really been good about. I'm just taking that time to write it down. I tend to be a personality that feels how I'm feeling, doesn't really like it, says, closes the door and just charges off in another direction and does something productive or even, you know, vacuuming or just anything so that I don't really have to think about that. And so he says, no, capture what you're feeling about yourself and your future right now. But, you know, with regard to those goals, things like, if you're thinking, I don't think I'm going to finish this project with success, you know, I don't think I'm going to be able to get to this place. Maybe if we're talking about Plexus, oh, I don't think I could get to leaders retreat. It's stop and capture those thoughts. And when you start to trend negative, to write out, okay, I'm feeling this way. So I'm going to do these 3 specific things today. And I thought this is somewhere we could really talk about this topic and say, what are some of the things that you think? And then what would be some of the action steps that you would maybe take? I think that if we kind of collaborate on this, maybe everybody learns from it, because I kind of ran into a blank when I thought, what are the action steps that go with that? As I started to write things down. And I thought that might be something really good, either today, right now on this call, or even in our chat group. Hey, if I'm feeling this way, what are some of those 3 specific steps I can take today that will move me in the right direction on that thing? So just going back to that example, I don't think I'm going to make it to leaders retreat. I don't think that I could. That doesn't have to be a true story, but what are the action steps I can take today on that would move you in the right direction? So I'm not just saying that's the only thing, but just as an example. Did you guys have thoughts about that when you got to that portion? Because I think if we overlook it, we miss a big part of how to create motivation and how to summon motivation, right? If we skip that part, which I think would be really easy for me to skip.
I think that part when he talked about like writing 3 things that you will do when you see that you're trending negatively. It's going to be different depending on the situation. And I think that, and I think that is the piece, like figuring out what those three things are. Like when it comes to the leaders retreat thing, like that's something I need to do. And figuring out what those three things are to turn your mind around, I think are key, but also you've got to be able to figure out what those three things are that will turn that around.
Yep. Gonna see if Andrea has any thoughts on that too. Andrea, if you have any thoughts to put in the chat, I'm gonna read them out loud, if you don't mind. Just if you guys have certain things that you run into that you start feeling stuck about, or like, I don't know if I can do this. Let's just put a pin in that and just let that be something that we maybe talk about in the chat too. Like just present it in the chat as a, for example, if I was having this thought, here might be 3 action steps that I could decide to take, because I think that'll help everyone. Andrea said she was thinking the past couple of days, if I don't make it to leaders retreat, I wouldn't be succeeding. And she's learned that she needs to rethink that. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's an arbitrary, that's an arbitrary goal anyway. It may not be on your vision board, or maybe it is, but working towards it is still going to make you overall successful. Just working towards it. I've always believed that from day one. That's not just words or fluff. For me, it's really what I believe. Even if I don't, you still land among the stars, right? Even if I don't hit that goal, but I keep working towards it. Andrea says, I liked how he said to do those 3 things daily, to write the goal, even though the goal is the same as the day before. I had that same note, Andrea, that same note in mind, because it meant to me that I didn't need to be constantly coming up with something new all the time, because that's the kind of place my brain would get hung up. That's every single day. How do I come up with new goals every day? I'll drown in, trying to achieve goals. But no, writing down the same thing for the next day works. So have a daily journaling practice. By capturing what your thoughts are and what you're feeling, you can take intentional action. When we don't stop and recognize what we feel, we will do some automatic things instead without thinking. So capture what you're currently thinking about yourself and your future. And when it trends negative, pause and write out 3 action steps you can take, 3 specific things you can do that day to move towards feeling more confident and capable, which I think was the key, because how we feel about what we are doing is so important. And if we keep raising that vibration and raising that positivity, we are going to keep moving in the right direction. Okay, so moving on to item 3. Go
I
ahead.
want to add to that.
Yeah,
So I'll
please.
get back to the statement I made last week about being successful and being a procrastinator are never synonymous. You can't have either, right?
Right.
So when you're writing your goal every day, I think being self-aware is recognizing, is that goal moving from page 1 to 2 to 30? Does it keep going with me because I'm procrastinating? Or is it going with me because it needs to keep going with me?
Right. Good point.
And then the other part that I took with that was he mentioned, he said, your mind is keeping track whether or not you followed through and stayed on track.
I wrote that one too, because that spoke to me.
Yeah. So
because our mind is keeping track, and then we're feeling a certain way about ourselves.
So that's our subconscious. And then if our mind is keeping track that, hey, you weren't doing what you're supposed to, in the back of our head, even if we haven't brought it out, even if we aren't saying it or journaling it, our mind is keeping track, and that's pointing us towards the negative direction.
Really
Even
good
if
point.
it's just in our subconscious.
Yep, I wrote that down. Are we carrying that same goal every time if we write the same goal day after day, Is it because we are actively working on that goal and that is still our goal and we are aiming in that direction, which great? Or do we keep rewriting it because we've been procrastinating? And I like when he said, the other note I wrote about that, Michelle, he said, because our brain is keeping track of whether or not we are, being accountable or doing the things. That also what happens is that our brain doesn't expect us to achieve those things because we just don't do them after we say them. And I was like, oh, that hurt because he was talking to me. He said when you teach yourself to do this, you gain the ability to stop feeling stuck. Most people will take that experience of feeling stuck and turn it into shame and frustration and stop progress. Full stop. I think we all understand that's what happens. We maybe just didn't really think about it, but high achievers will take that feeling and say, I'm feeling this way, so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then he gives examples. So I think that's something to really lean into. Okay, so the third of the key actions to creating motivation is to discern what 3 things to do each day. So that's 3 simple things that will move you forward. That creates momentum. It'll give you a huge amount of motivation by the end of the week. He talks about an object in motion tends to stay in motion. And he said, if you want more motivation, get back in motion, because with momentum or with motivation comes momentum. He summarizes the process to look like this. I'll do 3 things today that I deliberately chose to do. So I wake up and raise my ambition. I've thought about my belief that I can do it and that it's what I'm doing. And then I wrote out 3 things that I'm going to do today. I'm going to make sure that I get progress each day towards my goals. That's where he said each day won't be perfect, but your mind's keeping track of whether you follow through. And so many people haven't followed through so many times that they lack motivation because their mind no longer expects anything from the self. So what about when you lose motivation? We'll talk about that later if we've got some time. But if anyone else has any thoughts on this topic, now's your time. I thought I put a question on this one, but apparently not. Oh, look, not only did I put it in my notes, I put it on the slide in all caps. I was with you. I was like, oh, that one's important. Like punch to the gut right there. All right, so put into daily practice, this creates motivation. So I feel like we have unlocked a lot of really important steps. The other tips that he gives are about developing a high performance habits morning routine. This is a combination of reading, goal planning, and movement. He says this is associated with much higher resilience and higher motivation. So super important to read something positive. That means no social media or news. We kind of talked about that at the top of, what we think about first and what we do first. Sitting down and writing out your goals daily. He talks about writing something that's for today and also writing something that's for next year, so to keep your mind thinking about those things. And that movement, something that demands physically from you in the morning. It doesn't matter what it is, but he definitely says, and I should have put on this slide, that you have to, it doesn't really matter what order you do it in, or even really what it is, as long as you spend at least 5 minutes on each thing. So anybody have thoughts on this? Stuff that you thought about when you got to this section?
So I like I like steps. I like a system. So I liked this piece where he gave specific things to do daily. And I didn't get to listen. I did not listen to this until yesterday. I didn't write my notes until today. So last night in the shower, I'm like, what are the 3 things that I need to do? Because I didn't have my notes yet. And so I remembered what they were, although I did not remember that the goals also included for a year. I only did the daily ones. But this morning I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm doing these things. And it was just like, it was so helpful to know what I need to do. But as I was doing it, And did my pivotal. So I did my movement. I got that. So I already got something out of the way that I would be doing later. Did my Bible time. There was my positive. So that's something I already do, but I didn't always do it, making sure they're first thing in the morning and making sure I always do them, but the part of sitting down and writing your goals daily was, I get emotional, just the littlest thing, but just like, that was so like a big aha moment for me. Like, I always have a to-do list and my to-do list grows and I couldn't even tell you how
And it suffocates us.
Yes,
We
and
feel
I
like
can't tell you how long my to-do list is right now, just in general. But what I did was I wrote down not these 3 things, because I already knew what I needed to do for these 3 things, but other things for the day. And I took a few from my long to-do list and put it for today. So I have a separate notes where I did today's and just breaking it down. So it was like, I can do this today, and the piece about, like your mind keeping track, like now my mind's going to go, oh, you did those things on your to-do list, so
Yes.
that
Listen.
was big for me.
Listen, don't feel bad
Yeah.
about crying about it. I love that we're getting into the emotions. And a few days ago, you guys, I cried to my husband about this very thing. So Christina, do not feel alone, because this is where I struggle. I mean, this is why I'm reading the book, and this is why I invited you guys to do it with me. Well, listening, not reading. But I was
Christina,
like, gosh, it's hard.
Go ahead, Michelle, I can hear you.
oh, first of all, don't get emotional because you started getting me emotional. So there's that. But okay, so truth be told, I've been listening to this book while I've been driving to and from work. And so I haven't been able to make many notes. And I'm already halfway through the book because I was thinking until last night or until yesterday when Christine told me otherwise. I was thinking I need to try to get the whole book done before today. And so I'm in the 4th chapter. So I'm trying to go back and remember what was on the 1st chapter now. But
yeah, and Michelle, just to recap there, we're going to listen to the same chapter like multiple times in the week and then talk about it, because we feel like that's just going on it. Oh yeah, it's going to let you really marinate in that topic. But yeah, I listened to the whole thing before we did this book club and started over with one topic at a time. So you're good.
Cool. Okay. Well, also, so about this slide here, and to Christina's point, it was, well, first of all, I was going to say before Christina said that, I thought it was interesting. He kind of called us all out, which I haven't implemented any of this yet. So I really need to work on something. But he kind of called everybody out because you said read, write their goals, and do movement 5 minutes each day, 5 minutes for each of them. He's like, you can't tell me you don't have 15 minutes in the morning. And I'm like, ooh, first of all, ouch. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, right. I did the same thing.
And then the other thing, just like Christina said, it gave me an aha moment because I was like, wow, I don't have goals every day. I go through the day just reacting I got a lot of stuff to do, whether it's work, whether it's outside of work. I do write lists and stuff, but I get to work and I haven't had a plan. I haven't had, like, it's really hard to feel like you've accomplished what you need to accomplish when you don't know what you're trying to accomplish that day. So
I know,
Christina,
we just spend our time putting out fires.
I get it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why. I got goosebumps. I feel like that's just stopping and recognizing that very thing, that and distraction, are like stealing from us the life that we want. That,
and
what the other Michelle pointed out at the beginning was Cheyenne said like her day ends up planning her, and Michelle brought up something he said about living your life, either planning it out or like it's being run by emotions. That's what you're talking about right here. We're reacting to the things that get thrown in front of us.
Yeah. And how many times do we get through the day or through a certain section of the day, or whether it's like my work at the office all day, or whether it's an evening or a weekend, and you look back and you're like, what did I do? What
I knew you were going to say that.
This time?
I knew, because you do. You're like, did I do anything today?
Stuff done.
I don't remember stopping to breathe or take care of myself or anything else, and yet I don't know what I accomplished today.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good stuff. Really good stuff.
I didn't read ahead but, or listen ahead. And maybe I'm foreshadowing, but I think that what I took from this is, okay, this is how I need to start my day, but I need to wrap my day. I need to end it very self-disciplined, and keep on my routine. And I think it ties in. I can't wait to try my sleep tonight. But like, I want to bookend it. Start your day like this, end your day like this.
Yep.
And let's see how that success grows. So like I said, I might be foreshadowing. Maybe he gives us this at the end of the book, how you end your day. But I think there's nothing more important than, we go back to as we were kids and your parents said, you start your day every morning, but you get up and you make your bed because you've accomplished it. It's really the same principle, how you're setting your tone, and how will we sleep if we go to bed at night thinking I didn't accomplish what I was supposed to accomplish, I'm not successful, I'm not going to sleep, so I think it probably will be both ends of the spectrum. So it was really good for me, and like I said, I don't know if that is at the end of this. Angela, you've listened to the whole thing.
Multiple times. Actually, one of the things that you brought up is in the chapter that Michelle, the other Michelle,
3, 2, 1
is in right
sleep and
now.
meds are next.
And I think you, if you're in 4, I think you're in the energy part of it,
Yes,
where
yep.
he's really digging deep into like, hey,
The meds are next.
he really talks about that. We'll get there, but he really talks about
Yeah.
how important it is to address your physical health, your sleep.
Yep.
If you don't have the
Yeah.
energy to dive into what your goals are, you're just not going to do it. He even says, and I thought this was fascinating, I believe it's in the focus chapter, he even says just about fatigue. So not getting the sleep you need to get, not getting the nutrition that you need to get, not addressing your physical health. He says most people, you'll hear them say, we are mostly driven to take action from or be distracted because of fear or fatigue, which I thought was interesting. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
He says mostly it's fatigue. Mostly people do these sort of distraction habits, binge watching Netflix, scrolling social media, whatever, not doing productive things and not focusing on something tangible that's going to move them towards a goal because they're tired. They aren't sleeping well. They don't have the energy. They don't have the physical, whatever. So it's really great. We're going to love. So that takes us right to chapter 2, which is going to be all about focus. I feel like this was a chapter that he really builds it in the first 1/3 of the chapter in a different way than how he brings it home towards the end. So I think he tries to hit some fundamentals, and then he drills down on actions and tangible things that we can do to make sure that we focus. And I felt like to myself when I said, let's do a book club, I thought, you know what, if I can only get people through chapter 1 and 2, we have done something. Because even chapter 1 and 2 is like motivation and focus. I mean, you can again, it's not all, this is for anybody, whether you're doing our business or not. But if we were just going to apply this to our business, man, the motivation and the focus, we could get you to senior gold on that alone before we even get to chapters 3 through 6. So I thought that was really great because we can actually make, if we turn this into a daily practice and incorporate all the things that matter to you, I think us as a group, we're going to be, happier and more fulfilled in general in our lives just from implementing this stuff. So I'm really excited.
Angela,
go for it.
one quick thing. I think it was mentioned by one of the Michelles, looking at the end of day, and somewhere I caught that Brandon talked about that it's called simply reflection. So even if we just reflected on those 3 things, or if we reflected on our energy, it's that reflection is kind of the final piece of that.
Yeah.
And it can be reflection on daily, it can be reflection on weekly, and it can be monthly, and then think about your year goal.
That's really good.
Very important.
That probably should have been on a slide and I missed it. So thank you. That's what I mean about doing this group this way, is that everybody brings things up that either, you know, I hear in a different way or something that maybe I missed the importance of. Yeah, and I think reflection is so important because we don't know how to celebrate the things that went well or what to refocus or, change something. So I think that's good. One thing that I wanted to bring up, he talked about throughout this, what about when you lose motivation? And so I thought maybe, we'll close it with this part. He gives examples of life circumstances changing, losing a job, someone was mean to me. I definitely hear that sometimes in our business. I've lost motivation because so-and-so wasn't how I wanted them to be, or things didn't go the way I wanted to. He says that he has to be honest with people and say they didn't lose motivation, but they lost touch with what they were focusing on, and they stopped focusing their mind on what they want. They stopped looking at their goals, imagining how those goals could manifest, and thinking about what they could do to achieve them. He says they stopped writing down the steps to make progress, and that it isn't a motivation problem, it is a focus problem. So, one other thing that I thought was great is he said, also check your physical feeling. Sometimes people are emotionally discouraged or burned out. And then he says, and I thought this was really cool, they didn't have the energy that they imagined it would take to do this. Boy, do I think that that's very relevant to us, in that we jump into something, blind. We don't really know what we're getting into, especially in our kind of business, and what kind of energy is it going to take to sustain this. So rejuvenate your physical self and respark your mind. So that's great, because he's going to talk about that in 4. And that if the above steps don't help, it is time to engage with a positive peer group, which you guys are all doing right here. And I was very happy when he said that. So talk to the people and the friends in your career who are striving, talk to people that are in another career who are striving forward, and engage in more conversations about the future with people who are thinking about it. He really dug into this topic, but I thought it was interesting. He said, sometimes you have to talk about the thing to start thinking about the thing. And maybe that's what's missing sometimes, is that we're not in the conversations about just talking about the future and what we're doing and what we're aiming for. So I think that for that reason, I'm excited that we're doing this, because I feel like it's going to start that kind of a thinking pod, a positivity group that's, moving forward. That is really all I have for you guys on this topic. Is there anybody that had some thoughts that didn't get to share yet? I've been trying to keep up on the chat too, to make sure that I didn't miss things. Let me go back to that one more time. I have to say that there was a lot of acknowledging of, getting thrown off easily or distracted easily. So I think the next chapter is going to be really good for us. And also just that morning habit, and like Judy said, the evening habit of reflecting too. And Deborah said, sometimes it's just getting out of my head. So writing and speaking truth and goals affirmatively would be a good thing. Yes, I completely agree. All right, you guys, I'm so excited that we got to talk today. I would love if you would put stuff in the chat that we're in. If you're not in our chat, make sure you get added, just so that, anything that came up for you around this topic, you can share it. And I do want to try to stay on topic, just because I think that's more effective for everybody. And I will see you next week.
So Angela, I was just going to mention real quick, Michelle's not on Facebook, so she's not in the chat and can't be added to the chat. So I just kind of
Well,
try to keep her updated.
You can have Messenger and not have Facebook. Did you know that?
I know. I just,
That's okay. Not that much is
No,
happening
I'm battling
chat.
it.
Don't feel pressured, because if it's a distraction for you or whatever,
Yeah.
don't even worry about it. Don't worry about it. Not that much is happening there. It was an afterthought to this group. It was more so we can drop in, that the call is happening or the recordings, which Christina can give to you. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
guys.
Thank you for
being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
bye.
Bye, ladies.